Whether you are looking to build a new career or kickstart that new idea that you've got,
Microsoft React connects you with the developers and startups that share your goals.
Learn new skills, meet new peers, and discover the latest in technology.
Events are running around the clock, so join us anytime, anywhere.
Reactors are communities to connect. We want you to meet real developers and entrepreneurs just like you. Here you can get skilled up and learn from our product experts in the Microsoft Cloud and in open source. So watch us on demand and share your own perspective as we live stream in communities all around the world.
Hey there, everyone. Good morning, good noon, and good evening to all of you who all are joining us globally. My name is Partharu, and I'm the Events and Program Manager for Microsoft Reactor India. Yes, I welcome you all to a Copilot Chronicles, and today's topic is Microsoft Copilot expands with Microsoft Graph connectors. And before we start, let's go through our code of conduct. We are all here to learn together, participate together. So please be respectful of other people's views, understanding their differences, be kind and considerate in a way we all engage. Yes, we do encourage you all to participate. Please do ask questions in the comment section and we'll pick it up from there. Now, I'd like to bring in Kamal, who's the host of our today's event, Copilot Chronicles. Hi, Kamal. Hope you are doing good.
I'm doing absolutely good, Pat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Kamal, we have speakers at the backstage. Would like to introduce them.
Yeah, definitely. So today, welcome everybody to the another series of Copilot Chronicles, and thank you so much for showing a lot of love, support for this channel. I've been getting a lot of support and feedback, and a lot of enthusiasm for the Copilot Chronicles because people wanted to attend something related to Copilot, but they could not find offline. So they really appreciate this online series. So firstly, thank you so much for everyone joining in, supporting this series. So definitely we're going to meet your expectations by getting more industry speakers, more technical panels, more discussions and innovative sessions, and if possible, a little more technical dive in sessions as well. So let's not waste our time. So let me bring in the two amazing speakers, MVP Nandeep Nachan and Smita. So Nandeep has been an Microsoft MVP, a consultant, SharePoint, Azure, Power Platform. You name a couple of the M365 services, he's already an expert in it. So glad to have you, Nandeep, back in Copilot Chronicles. And Smita, welcome again. She's also another Microsoft MVP in 365 business application, 365 app services, and author, speaker, and a consultant. So welcome you both back to Copilot Chronicles show. So the stage is all yours. Go ahead, dive deep into it. Let's see what all we can kind of explore in today's extensibility with Graph. Looking forward to the event.
Okay, thank you very much, Kamal, and thank you, Parth, for the nice introduction. Hopefully, you are able to see my screen and we can get started from here. All right, so hello all, welcome to another episode of Microsoft Copilot, and then today we are going to talk about Microsoft Graph Connector. Okay, so many of you have been working with Microsoft 365, all of its apps, services for a while now. And inside Microsoft 365 ecosystem, Microsoft Search, SharePoint Search, and nowadays Microsoft Copilot help you to surface your relevant search results from the people you work with, the data or the information that you have access to from various apps, including content and files from SharePoint as well as OneDrive, even maybe the conversations from Microsoft Teams or your email from the Outlook. So the external data dependency adds another angle to this equation. So on a daily basis, alongside Microsoft 365, we interact with various external systems, for example, ServiceNow to work on tasks or assign tickets and incidents to us, maybe Workday for financial kind of a management and human resources, or even any form of data, including any REST API, any databases, all those kind of things. So in today's session, we will see like how we can bring all this external kind of data together and form an analysis on top of it using Microsoft Copilot. So yeah, it is possible with Microsoft Graph Connectors, and in today's session, we are going to talk more about it. Okay, so quickly, like Microsoft Graph Connector provides a powerful platform for ingesting unstructured line of business data into Microsoft Graph. And this integration allows Copilot for Microsoft 365 to reason over the entirety of your enterprise content. All right. So this is what we are going to cover. A quick introduction. Myself, Nandadeep Nazar. I'm Microsoft MVP as well as Microsoft Certified Trainer. I'm from Pune, and I'm author of 3 books, including SharePoint Framework, SharePoint Hybrid, as well as Viva Connections. And onto the right-hand side, here are a few of the social media handles to get in touch with me. And with me today is Smita.
Hello, myself Smita Nasan. I am from Pune, India. I am a Microsoft MVP as well as Microsoft Certified Trainer. I am an author of these 2 books, and these are some of my social handles by which you can just get in touch with me.
All right, so with that, let's move to the agenda. This is the thing that we are going to discuss over an hour today. So we will see quickly about Copilot for Microsoft 365. I know most of you have been using Microsoft 365 as well as Copilot in your day-to-day life, but we will still go into the basics of it. We will also explore the architecture of Copilot for Microsoft 365, and then we will see like how, or again, like what are the ways in which we will be able to extend Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. Then we will see plugins and graph connectors, which are two kind of ways in which you will be able to extend Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. So we'll compare them side by side. What is the pros and cons? What is the difference between those two? And then we will go into our topic of how we can go ahead and build a custom graph connector. And then we will see like how the graph connector works better with Copilot, and then how we will be able to securely bring the external content into Microsoft 365. Okay, so that is the pack agenda that we have for this session. All right, so let's start with Microsoft 365 Copilot introduction.
So let's see what is the Microsoft 365 Copilot and how does it really works for us. So Microsoft 365 Copilot is your Copilot for work. So Microsoft 365 Copilot is a sophisticated processing and orchestration engine that provides AI powered productivity capabilities. So at a fundamental level, so the Copilot has a few core components, which is first is a LLM, that is a large language models. So Copilot is more than OpenAI's ChatGPT embedded into Microsoft 365. It's a sophisticated processing and orchestration engine working behind the scenes to combine the power of LLMs, including the GPT-4, with the Microsoft apps and your business data in Microsoft Graph that is now accessible to everyone through natural language. So the content in Microsoft Graph, such as emails, chats, and the documents that you have a permission to access the Microsoft 365 apps that you use every day, such as Word and PowerPoint, Microsoft 365 apps such as Excel, Outlook, Teams, Loop, and many more operate with a copilot to support the users in the context of their work. So the Copilot combines the power of large language models with data, your data in Microsoft Graph, and the knowledge of the internet, not just at a point in time when the large language models was trained, but in real time up to the knowledge. So it can be accessed through natural language across all the Microsoft 365 apps to turn your words into the most powerful productivity tool on the planet.
Okay, so now that let's have a quick look at the architecture of this Microsoft 365 Copilot, or at least how Microsoft 365 Copilot works. Okay, so the plugin and the connectors that we build for Microsoft Copilot are part of the larger Copilot for Microsoft 365 system. The diagram on the screen illustrates like how the user prompt is interpreted and processed into the natural language results through Copilot system. Okay, so let's summarize like how Microsoft 365 Copilot works, starting from the user prompt. So firstly, the Copilot receives the input prompt from a user in app, for example, Word, PowerPoint, or Excel. Secondly, in that case, Copilot pre-processes the prompt through an approach called as grounding, which improves the specificity of your prompt, ensuring that you get the answers which are relevant to the actionable to your specific task. Okay, so it does so by making a call to the Microsoft Graph and semantic index and accessing your organization data. So semantic index scopes the user's data, which is used by the Copilot to the documents and data that are already visible to them through existing Microsoft 365 role-based access control. Okay. Then thirdly, it gives the option to the RAG, like the retrieval of the information, which is referred to as the retrieval augmented generation or RAG. It allows copilots to provide exactly the right type of information as input to the LLM. And when doing so, Copilot combines this user data with other inputs, for example, information which is retrieved from knowledge base articles to improve the user prompts. And then fourthly, when it done with that, Copilot takes the response from the LLM and post-process that response. In the fifth step, which is the post-processing, includes more grounding calls to Microsoft Graph, responsible for AI checks, security, compliance, as well as the privacy reviews and command generation. And then, then in the sixth step, it goes ahead and then Copilot returns the recommended response to the user, and the commands backs to the apps where the user can review and assess the suggested kind of responses. So this is the very basic architecture, like how the flows work through Microsoft Copilot. And then what we are going to do today is like we are going to introduce our external data into this kind of a system which can be processed by Microsoft Graph, and then we will see how the grounding happens there. Okay, but just keep this kind of a diagram in your mind throughout this session. All right, so let's get ahead and see like what are the ways in which we'll be able to extend the Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. So Copilot for Microsoft 365 helps people work better with Microsoft programs like Word, Excel, and Outlook, for example, and look it's good at the task of understanding, summarizing, predicting, or maybe translating the information, and it uses the information from your organization's file, and it kind of messages that to this task. Okay, but most business tasks don't only use Microsoft 365. With Copilot extensibility in place, you can add extra abilities and knowledge that fits your business, because in your organization you might be using few external systems, for example ServiceNow, Workday, or maybe other third party systems that you work with on a daily basis. So obviously we need some ways through which we can expand the capabilities of Microsoft Copilot, and then use that using something called as an plugins or graph connector. So this makes possible for the Copilot to do even more amazing kind of things for your organization, and you can make Copilot better suited for your needs by turning your own apps into the tools that work with it. And also you can give Copilot some kind of a more information from your company by connecting it to the data through Microsoft Graph Connector. Okay, so through Graph Connector we can connect to any type of data, structured data or non-structured kind of a data which maybe lies into the external systems. So onto the diagram, for example, if you see onto the x-axis, we do have knowledge. So it is kind of an expanding the organizational knowledge. So we can ground the Copilot in your organization content and data to create even deeper insights and connections. So we do have Microsoft Graph, which surfaces your data from the organization where you have the access. Then we do have some more data which is available onto the internet, and then we do now have Graph Connector, so that through this Graph Connector we will be able to expand the knowledge by bringing the data from the external systems, which will be helpful to the Copilot to answer the user queries. At the same time, for example, if you have a look at the y-axis, so y-axis is all about extending the user skills. So you can connect the Copilot to the application you worked with plugins to streamline your everyday task and all kind of an activities. So here again you can see that we do have Microsoft 365 apps that we use every day alongside Copilot for Microsoft 365. But at the same time we can create a plugins that can be integrated into any of these apps, and then it will help to extend the user skill. So Microsoft 365 Copilot extensibility enables you to expand your organization's AI-powered productivity, capacity, and creativity. At the same time, it preserves the trust as a as kind of an Copilot operates within your organization's security and product security and compliance kind of an boundaries that it has got. So that means it adheres to the Microsoft responsible AI standards. So just keep in mind that we do have some kind of a knowledge which is available through Microsoft Graph. Even we can get it from the internet, but at the same time Graph Connector will help you to get the data from the external system, get that into the Microsoft Graph, which can be used into the search. How that we will see, but let's go ahead and see like how you can build those plugin as well as the Graph connectors.
So there are two ways of extending the Copilot for Microsoft 365. So by augmenting the Copilot with skills through plugins and grounding it with the organizational data through Graph connectors. So first of all, let's see about this plugin. So plugins extends your user skills by interacting with your web service using a natural language in Microsoft Copilot. So with plugins, you can access a real-time information such as finding the latest news coverage on a product launch. You can retrieve the relational data such as reporting on a service tickets assigned to a given team member. Also, you can just perform the actions across the app, such as creating a new task in your organization work tracking system. So, you can build the plugins by providing a Microsoft Team message extension or a Power Platform connector. And if you already have a message extension or Power Platform connector, then you already have the foundation to create a plugin for your Copilot. So, the Microsoft Graph connectors, it increases the discoverability and engagement of your enterprise data by deeply integrating your data into the Copilot for Microsoft 365 experience. So, with Graph connectors, you can make the most of your external data by letting a Copilot read and summarize the data from various places. Also, this helps you to understand the things better. You can use a Copilot as a research assistant. It can find the information, summarize it, and answer these questions using the data you choose. Also, you can surface the intelligence of Copilot in Microsoft Search and other tools to improve how the users find what they need. So this explains all about this diagram about this semantic index. So the semantic index is a system that helps improve the way search functions work within the Microsoft 365. So it's like a database that organizes information in a smarter way, making it easier for users to find what they are looking for. So these systems understand the meaning behind the words and the phrases, so it can be provide a more relevant search results. Additionally, it also respects the security rules, ensuring that the users only see the content they are allowed to access. Overall, the semantic index enhances the search experience within a Microsoft 365 by making it more efficient and also more accurate.
Okay, so for example, let's take this part. You can start from here. So for example, if you are a low code or no code kind of a developer, that means you use Power Platform every day and you want to connect to your data. In that case, yes, you can go ahead and then you can create a Power Platform connector to connect to the external data. So if in case you have the Power Platform connector, you are pretty much close to having that exposed as as an Microsoft 365 Copilot Graph connector or the connector. And then secondly, for example, if you are from the from the very much advanced part, for example, if you are working onto the code and you want to go ahead and connect the data into the Microsoft Search or Context IQ or Microsoft 365 apps, in that case what you can do is you can connect to that data using something called as a Microsoft Graph connector. And in this particular session we are going to have a look at that. Now that, for example, if in case you do not fit into any of these situation or any of these criteria, in that case probably if you are kind of a developer who mostly work with Microsoft Teams, in that case you just need to see, like for example, if you have built in any Microsoft extension before. If in case you have done that, then congratulations, you already have the foundation ready for your plugins for Copilot. And for example, if no, then you can build the feature rich solution using bot framework, and then you're good to go as a developer or as a user who is kind of an using Microsoft 365 graph connectors. Okay, so this is kind of an diagram which shows all the things, like if in case you are from a low code platform or no code platform, or maybe you are a developer, or maybe you manage any of the external systems. You have all possible ways in which you will be able to bring your external data into Microsoft 365 ecosystem using graph connectors. But again, there are few benefits and limitations of it. Let's see those one by one.
Yeah. So let's see how over here the comparison and the benefits and limitations of the graph connector and the messaging extends plugin. So you may want to explore the pros and cons of each option before making any decision. So for instance, graph connector helps to keep the third party data within the compliance boundary by indexing the data, and on the other hand, the real time data through the use of message extensions are not indexed and can be shared or accessed outside of the defined compliance boundary. So, as a plugin developer, you are responsible for securing your computer's data within the bounds of your service and providing the information on your policies regarding the user's personal information. So, over here, we have already listed some of these limitation benefits. So, it's about when it's come to the benefits for the graph connector, it is relevant based on the user activities, the semantic discovery of the content without turning on the plugins, the activities with help with ranking and relevance of search results, and the data stays within the compliance boundary. Overall, all these details, and then over here in the messaging extension plugins, so discoverably in store and enabling the branded experience, better UX with the adaptive cards. This way, we have mentioned all the details over here. So let's see more about this message extension plugin. So here is an example of writable data with a message extension. So this plugin manages a product inventory which Copilot searches the data from the inventory and displays the results in adaptive card, where it allows the user to modify the stock. So over here you can request for data. Also you can just update the data from here itself. Then for the graph connector, so this screen shows a sample response from Copilot utilizing the data from the graph connector. So the graph connector indexes the issues and response repositories from GitHub, presenting the results in a plain text as opposed to an adaptive card format. So by comparing this with the message extension example shown earlier, you can see the differences between them.
All right, so now that let's see, like for example, if you want to build your own graph connector, what are the building blocks? So first thing is that you need API. So we need to use Microsoft Graph API to create a connection and then ingest the external items and activities inside of that. Secondly, we will need some kind of a schema, because now that we are talking about the external data, so external data has got its own attributes, and then we need to define a JSON definition of the metadata properties along with the aliases, semantic labels, etc., which we have into the external system. So let's say, for example, you want to get the service now tickets or incidents into your system, then obviously all of the possible properties of the service now ticket, for example, the ID, description, assigned to, and all those fields, it will constitute all of your schema. Thirdly, we will need to set the permissions by defining who are the users or the groups in your tenant who should have access to which kind of an properties, or at least which kind of an items inside of the data that you have brought from the external system, because we need to respect the security and privacy which is being followed in the other systems into the Microsoft 365 as well. So for example, if in case you cannot see any of the ServiceNow incident or ticket assigned to the other users in ServiceNow, then obviously you should not see that into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem as well. So from that angle, permission plays an important role, because not all the data should be always visible to all the people. Based on what kind of permissions they had in the external system, we should replicate the same permissions from for them into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. All right, so let's see a quick demo like how we can go ahead build our custom graph connector, and then we will go from there. For example, if you are interested to know more about the graph connector that we have built right now, you can always refer to this link. We will put that link in the chat window. So this is kind of a sample that contains Microsoft graph connector built in using PowerShell that shows how to ingest the REST countries kind of an APIs for each of the country that have. So there is a REST countries kind of an API available, which is available at restcountries.com. Probably I can show it to you quickly. So if I simply go to the HTTPS REST countries. Oh, so here you can see that here the information about all of the countries is specified here. So the country, its capital, the density of the country, and all the other parameters which are being specified here. So here you can see that all of the endpoints that we have got. So through these endpoints, we should be able to see all of the countries which are there. So let's say, for example, if I just pick this endpoint and try to hit that endpoint directly into the browser, probably we should be able to see all of the information about the countries that we have got here. So this is the entire JSON information, but you can see that we do have information about various countries here. Okay, so it has got all the information about name of the country, then again the official description of that country, the borders which are surrounded by that country, the native language, population, and all that information. So let's consider a scenario like wherein you want to refer to the country's information inside of your Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So instead of maybe searching over the internet, we can just bring this kind of a graph connector into the place, and then which will help you to get the information while you're composing maybe your email, or maybe while you are drafting some kind of an document for your customer. Okay, so for each of the country that you see here, it extracts the metadata from the REST API kind of a maps, and then it map that entire information into the external connection schema, and then ingests the content, retaining the content and metadata. So the ingested content is said to be visible to everyone in the organization, but again, you can apply all those kind of security policies by which you can restrict it to a certain set of users. Okay, so these are the APIs that we were talking about. But again, for example, if you, this is just one example, but if in case you have got more number of REST APIs available inside of your organization, or maybe from your third parties, in that case you can use the same kind of an techniques that we are going to show you now, and then from there you should be able to create your own graph connector, bring the data which is outside of your system into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, right? So again, this is the endpoint that we have got, and then again we are going to use this entire endpoint to go ahead and get the all of the countries information into our system. Okay, so now that for example, whenever you want to go ahead and start creating the custom connector, as we have seen that we first need to use the graph APIs. So for that, what we will do is we do have some code. So this is the code which is available in PowerShell, but PowerShell is not the only option which you are limited to while you are creating your own custom graph connector. Because let's say, for example, you want to, or maybe if you are from a .NET background, you can create your custom graph connector using .NET code as well. Even in Python, you can go ahead and do that. Even I have seen the examples where people have used Azure functions to go ahead and create the graph connector. Okay, so you are not only limited to using this one option, but we just wanted to show you this option wherein you will get some kind of a starting point by which you can connect to the external content, and then you will be able to get that content. Okay, so first thing, now that we want to go ahead and create an Entra app. Okay, so Entra is the new word which is available for our Microsoft Azure AD. So first thing is that we need to go ahead and create an Azure AD app registration, which is now called as Entra app. So let me just quickly go to the Azure portal. So this is my Azure portal, and here you can see that we have one graph connector, or sorry, one Azure AD app registration created. So firstly, like we do have it here, so either you can go ahead create it by hand, but we do have some automated kind of an approach available from PowerShell, which I'm going to walk you through. So this is the um, PowerShell script which is going to go ahead and create that graph, create that app registration. Okay, so once you run the script, it is going to create that, and I have it pre-created because it takes some time to reflect all of those changes. So I didn't wanted to waste that time in the live demo. So first thing, what we are doing is that we are connecting to the Microsoft Graph. We are using a specific module of Microsoft Graph PowerShell here to go ahead and connect to the Microsoft Graph with the scope of app role assignment dot read write dot all, as well as the application dot read write dot all. So we need this because we want to create an Azure AD app registration into the system, and again we need to assign some kind of an role permissions onto that app registration. So for that we need these two Graph API permissions to go ahead and do that. So this is the way like we compose all those information together. So we do have this ID, which is a GUID, predefined GUID available for external connection dot read write dot own by. So this kind of an API will help you to go ahead and create an external connection into your Microsoft Graph. And secondly, we have another GUID, so which is again an standard GUID which is available for external item dot read write dot own by. So which will help you to go ahead and create an external item into the system, and then again Microsoft Graph can go ahead and read the information from there. We do have another GUID, a specific GUID which is for Microsoft Graph App ID. So what we are trying to do now is that we want to create an Microsoft Graph, Microsoft Azure AD app registration, and we want to use we want to give some kind of an permissions onto that. So let's say, for example, if I again go back to the Azure AD app registration or this Entra app, in that case, if I go to the API permissions here, you can see that those API permissions have been added. So that should make you more comfortable why we are using those. So these two API permissions which are needed by our Azure AD app registration, so that we will be able to create an external connection into our Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And then secondly, using this read write on by onto the external item, we should be able to ingest the external item into the Microsoft Graph. Okay, so that's the reason we need these two Graph API permissions. And to do that, we are using this notation so that we need access onto these two resources. These are the roles that we need, and we need to use create that using the Microsoft Graph. So for first, what we do is we start by creating the application, the Azure AD app registration. So for that, again, we use the new -mg application, which is kind of an commandlet which is available inside Microsoft Graph. Okay, so once you will use this command, it will prompt you to log into your Microsoft Azure Entra ID. So connect to the Entra ID by giving the username and password, and then it will connect that with the scopes which are defined to you. Once it connects, the next statement is that we need to go ahead and create the new app registration. So we create that app registration by specifying this kind of an display name, which we see here. So this is a display name for our Azure AD app registration, and which needs this kind of an resource access, which we have already defined into this JSON format. Okay. Next thing is that once you might have noticed when you have created the Azure AD app registration is that once you go ahead create the Azure AD app registration, um, the app registration that you have, that needs to be consented by the admin until unless you want to go ahead and start using them. So we want to also automate that process. For that reason, we have this piece of code like new-mg service principal app role assignment, which will help us to go ahead and grant that admin consent onto the app registration or onto the resources that we have requested for. So these are the two requests that we have: resources, API, Graph API permissions that we have requested the access for, that we want to go ahead and grant the admin consent for that. So that part we are doing from here by running this command. Okay, so that way we can go ahead and then give the admin consent. Once we get the admin consent, next that we need to go ahead and have some kind of an capability to get ourselves authenticated using that app registration. And for that, we are going to use app ID and app secret. So again, if I move back to the Azure portal, if I go into the overview section here, you will be able to see all of the app ID. So this is the app ID or the client ID that we are going to have. Alongside that, we want to also go ahead and use the secret. So either you can use secret, or maybe if you want, even you can create a certificate. But just to keep it simple, we are going to use client secret. So this is the client secret value that we want to go ahead and use, which we are generating through the commandlet, which is available inside Microsoft Graph. So for that, we do have this commandlet available, add -mg application password, which will just go ahead and create a new client secret for you. So once you have that client secret, the combination of client ID and client secret will be used, or it can be used to go ahead and authenticate yourself against the Microsoft Azure app registration that we have created. So we get that credential with us. So we now have the app created. We now have the credential to go ahead and get ourselves authenticated to app. The next thing is that we are just storing this information into the local system, because again, we do have couple of other scripts to run to go ahead and create the external connection, as well as import the external content into the Microsoft Graph. So we do store that information into the configuration file, the config.ini file, into the secured kind of an format, so that we can use that somewhere else. So this is the kind of an information that gets generated here. You can see that we do have this key ID. So don't worry, this is kind of an obfuscated key ID, which obviously I'm not using. So again, we do have the secret ID, which is being noted there, and then you should be able to go ahead and use that into the other scripts. Okay, so this is how that ini file will get created. So now that once we have the app registration created, second thing is now we want to go ahead and create the external connection. Okay, so for that, firstly we want to get ourselves authenticated, and to get ourselves authenticated, we have another script called as initialize graph client, through which we are just passing the content or getting the content from that config inm file, and then we are getting those credentials to get ourselves connected to the tenant using the app ID and app secret that we just have created into this app registration. Okay, so this thing that we have got, and then again, for example, if I again go back here, the next thing is that we want to go ahead and create the external connection, and to create the external connection, again, we need certain kind of a JSON format to be available with us. So for that, we do have another file called as connect configuration ps1. So this is the JSON kind of a structure which will help us to go ahead and create the external connection. Okay, sorry. Okay, so now that if you have a look at this external connection, this one has got user ID. So this user ID is important because when we will create the connection, this is the user with which we are configuring, and then we do have this connection. So the ID here is it has to be some kind of a unique ID with which it will be kind of an observed into your external connections. You can give some kind of a name by which it will be easily readable to the users who are going to use that into their system. We can have some kind of a description for that. When it comes to the activity settings, these are the activity settings that we have got. Here we have something called as an URL to item resolver. This is very important property when we are creating the graph connector, because URL to item resolver enables the platform to become aware when the user share the URLs from your external content with each other. Okay, so that's the reason it is pretty much important that we should compose that, and we are composing in such a way that whenever anyone wants to share that URL with someone else, that one will entirely get created into the system. So in this case, since we are using this REST countries API, so we are using that REST countries API and then followed by name. There will be a name of that country. So always this one will be uniquely identifiable, and this will lead you to the data which is available for that country. When it comes to the search properties, we can create the search properties. So now that we need to have search properties, because the data which is into the external system, we want to bring that to the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and then we should have some kind of an properties defined on that. So now that we are coming to the second part of the discussion, the schema part. Okay, so now that we are composing that entire schema here, so if you have a look at the schema, we do have schema for name, region, because this is a specific schema for our Microsoft Graph Connector, which is for the countries. But again, based on the data that you want to bring from the external system into your Microsoft 365 ecosystem, this schema will change. So let's say, for example, you want to bring the ServiceNow data into Microsoft 365 ecosystem. The schema will be as of the ServiceNow system. For example, the ID is there, the type of the case that you have raised, the description, the resolver name, the other properties that could be with the service now ticket. So here in this case, we do have the name, we do have type. So type can be string, or it could be integer, boolean, all those kind of a thing. So again, these are the same kind of an parameters that you must have used whenever you are using the graph, or maybe SharePoint search, or maybe any of the other searches that you have configured into the Microsoft 365. So it's queryable. That means can we be able to query the data using this property? If you set it to true, then in that case, yes, you will be able to use that while you are querying to the data or the information. It's searchable. That means will we be able to search for this particular property? If you set it to true, then yes, you will be. Otherwise, you won't be. Is retrievable. That means whether this particular property that we have, should it be retrievable, and again, will you be able to use that into your refiners and all those things? So if in case you are setting it true, that property will be respected for your specific schema property, otherwise it will not. So based on like how you want to go ahead and use that, you can do it. So let's say, for example, you don't want a user to query your data using name or maybe using region, you can make it as false. Okay, so that way you can go ahead, define your entire schema. So we do have some schema which is for the population, latitude, longitude. And again, here you can see that I don't have all the properties as a searchable, because I don't want the user to search by population, because it may vary, right? So in that case, I'm just making it as a retrievable, so that the population will be retrieved, but again, people won't be able to query it directly, or maybe it won't be directly returned into the search term. Okay, so this is the entire schema that we have got, and then this schema we are just populating here. Okay, so this is the schema that we have got, and then we are just taking the schema here. The next thing is that we do have those search properties, but again, search property needs some kind of an layout, because when the search results will be shown to the users, whether it is into the Copilot, or maybe whether it is into the Microsoft 365 search or SharePoint search, it has to follow certain kind of an format, and that format is given by something called as an adaptive card. So adaptive card is nothing but your JSON based structure, wherein it is a lightweight, and then it can be system agnostic, and then again from there you will be able to present your data into the format that you want. So this is the adaptive card that we already have built, which we are just giving that back. So this is the adaptive card that we have got. Let me just quickly show you that adaptive card as well. So in this adaptive card, you can create the columns and the items inside of that, and again, you can format like how you want the data to be available, or it should be shown to your end users when they will hit this external item. So let's say, for example, whenever I will search for any of the country into my SharePoint search, how that should look like. Okay, so this is the adaptive card that I can show. So let's say, for example, for that reason, if I go into the my Microsoft 365 portal, and then I know that I do have few of the countries which I already have bring as an external data into my system. So what I will do is like probably I can do that search directly from the Microsoft 365 search, or even I will be able to search that from SharePoint. Okay, so let's say, for example, if you go into the SharePoint, which is a favorite search engine for everyone, or maybe here I will just search for New Delhi. I haven't searched for it yet, but let us see if it is able to bring that information. So here you can see that this entire information is coming from the adaptive card that we have defined. So for example, if I again go back to the adaptive card, here we do have that information, like we do have this image which is being shown here. Again, we do have some information about where it is located and everything. So that is the information that you are seeing here, like located in which region, which sub region. So all that information is being driven from this adaptive card. So that means you do have the entire control over how the format of this information should look like when you are bringing the external data into the system. Okay, so that you have all the control. And again, for example, if you don't want to show certain information to the users in a visual appearance, even you can do that from the from the adaptive card. So here you can see that, for example, if any of the flag URL is not present, probably we are hiding that information. Again, for example, if you do the same search from here, let me just search New Delhi one more time here. So again, in the SharePoint search, it will follow the same thing. So whether you are using this same information into the Microsoft 365 search or SharePoint, or maybe into the context IQ, you are going to get the same kind of responses into the external item that you have defined. So that is kind of an one thing that you should be able to do by bringing the external systems or external data into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. All right, so now that, let's say, for example, if we move ahead, now that we have our external connection ready. So to create that external connection, what we will do is we will go ahead and run this command new -mg external connection, so that we want to go ahead and create a new external connection because we want to connect to the external system. So in this case, REST API is our REST countries is our REST API where we want to go ahead and connect. So the schema that we have here is the Microsoft graph.xml item, and this is the schema that we have got from the previous um, PowerShell command. So what we do now is that we go ahead and update that external connection schema with the schema which was defined into that adaptive card. So all those things happen here, and then again we need to wait until that schema get provision, and then probably it took me around 15 to 20 minutes to go ahead and have that schema entirely provisioned into the system. So for that same reason, I already have created that schema which I can show it to you. So once you go to the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, under the settings menu, you should be able to see something called as an search and intelligence. So once you go into the search and intelligence, we do have data sources. So all of the data sources that you have created, you should be able to see on this page, as well as all of the external connectors that you are building through. Since they fall under the data sources, you should be able to see all those listed here. Okay, so we do have this name of the data connector that we have built. For example, REST contains PowerShell. If you remember from the very first script that we built, and again, this is the connection ID, this is the publisher, all that information is here. So when you will provision it for the first time, the state will be provisioning, and whenever you're setting up the new connector, it takes roughly around 10 to 15 minutes to go ahead and have that into the ready state. Once your connector is into the ready state, you are free to go ahead and use that. Again, for example, now that this connector is ready, it is available to everyone into the organization. So in that case, if you want to break it down, you want to add some kind of a staging, you can click this option called as an add staging, and this will help you to just roll out this feature or this connector to a certain set of users. Okay, so here I can go ahead and I can define only the users to which I want to go ahead and not just user, but even the groups as well, to which I want this external connection should be available. So that means not all of the data which is available from the external system will be shown to everyone, but you do have a control like who can see that data. Okay, so on top of that, again, you do have this kind of a functionality. So once you have that, we are pretty much ready with the thing that we do have our external connection. The next thing is that we want to bring the data, the actual data that we have got. So for that reason, again, for example, if I go back here, we have done at least this API part. We have created the external connection or that app registration. We have defined our schema. We have created the external connector as well. And now that we want to go ahead and bring in the data instead of that. So to bring the data, again, we are going to use another PowerShell here, which is called as an import content. So with this PowerShell, what you can do, like you simply need to connect to the external system, get that data into the format which was defined by your external connector configuration, the schema, like the name, region, sub-region, and everything, whichever you are following. And then again, once that schema matches, you just need to import that entire information into the Microsoft Graph. Okay, so for that, what we are going to do here is that we are firstly going to go ahead and get all those rest countries. Okay, so this is the URL where we have all those rest countries which we just have seen. If you want, I can go back there one more time, and then you should be able to see all of the countries which are listed here. So okay, so it won't be directly here because we do have other URLs here which composes the entire thing. So let's say, for example, if I go to slash all, so this should show us all of the countries which are available under the restcountries.com. And what we are going to do now is that through or using PowerShell, we are going to connect to this API which is available here. And this entire collection of the JSON contains the country information for each of the country. So there are around 250 countries which are listed into this APIs, which we are going to fetch and then ingest that into the Microsoft Graph. So for that, what we do is firstly, we want to get those countries. So this is again kind of an optional process. If you want, you can directly copy paste everything from here, save that into a file, and then you can add that directly into your Microsoft Graph. Otherwise, if you want to get it automated, this is the simple thing like we are just using the invoke-rest method, which will simply invoke the invoke the REST kind of an API, get the data from there, and then each of the property we should be able to read. For example, name of the country, then we do have the English pronunciation for that, the borders and everything that we have got, we should be able to read from there. So what we will do from here is that we will go ahead, read out the entire information about all the countries into the JSON format. We will loop through that again. For example, if there is a nested kind of a thing, for example, one country can share the boundary with multiple countries, we are again going to go into the for each loop and get all those countries, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, we will get a single instance of the country which have got all the information, for example, name, region, sub-region, capital, population, latitude, longitude, area, map, flag, all those kind of a thing that we see here. Okay, so at the end, we are going to get information about each of the country into this format. Once we get this information, what we want to do now is that we want to import that entire JSON or that entire information into the Microsoft Graph, which is our external item. So for that, what we will do is again, we will go ahead and define all those data that we want to go ahead and use or import as an external item into the Microsoft Graph. And here you can see something called as an ACL, access control list. We will come to this access control list bit later because again, permission is another part that we should focus on to. But let's focus on to this part. Like we do have activities here. Okay, so in the activities, what we are going to do is that when this particular external activity has been created, so we'll go ahead, we will define the type as in created. So this is the time when that activity got created, this is the start date time when that got created, and who performed those activity. And that is the reason when we created the external connection, we mentioned some kind of an user ID there. Okay, so for example, if I go back here, we had mention about the user ID. For example, if I go here back one more time, we had mentioned the user ID here. So okay, I'm just trying to figure it out where it was, but that user ID will be used here to go ahead and then use. So okay, so this is the user ID. You can see external connection dot user ID, because we want to also maintain that for maybe our future references, like who imported the entire content. Okay, so in that case, we can use that from here. Once we have all the information in the place, so now that we connected to the external system, we imported all that data into the JSON format. And now that we want to import that entire JSON as an external item into Microsoft Graph. For that, again, we do have one commandlet available in Microsoft.graph PowerShell, which is called set-mg external connection item, through which we'll be able to go ahead and create an external item into the connection that we had created. So here we are giving the reference of the external connection ID. So this is a place where we are giving all that information. Okay, so this is a connection ID that we had created. We are specifying the ID of the item that we want to go ahead and ingest, and again, this is the entire body parameter. So that means the entire body of the item that we want to go ahead and ingest into. So once we have all this thing, once we run this command, the single item should get ingested into the Microsoft Graph. Okay, so once we have the entire loop running through, we should have all the information imported, all those items imported into our Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And now that let's see like how that does look like. So now that if I again go back to the data sources that we had defined here, if you scroll to the right, you should be able to see all of the items which are indexed. So there are roughly about 247 items that we had added here. And now that, for example, if you want to have a look at them, even you can go there and then you should be able to see all those. But let's say, for example, the big question is now that how you will be able to go ahead and use that into Microsoft Copilot. Okay, so for that I will go into the Microsoft Copilot. We don't need to do any external configurations to go ahead and use this into the Microsoft Copilot, but it will, since this entire information is already available into the Microsoft search, we had ingested that, and then again we do have access to this information using Microsoft Graph. We should be able to directly go ahead and use that into the Microsoft Copilot. So let's say, for example, I will just go to the previous chats that I had with Copilot. So here you can see that when when I ask Copilot about, tell me about Tanzania. So since I didn't had any of the data about Tanzania into my system, it gave me some information like, I'm sorry, but it seems like there is no specific information available in the enterprise search. Okay, because I did not imported that. But now that, let's say, for example, if I do that search right now, we should be able to get that data. So for that, again, I will click on new chat, and then again I will search for the same information like tell me about the Tanzania. Okay, and once we invoke this search, what the Microsoft Copilot is going to do is that it is going to look for the entire information of related to that keyword, or at least related to that particular semantic index into everything, like including SharePoint, conversations and everything. But it gets that like this information is available as an external data, and here you can see that it is pointing me to that external data. Okay, so all this information here is coming from something called as an external data, and here you can see that as a citation. So you will get the confidence by using that rack pattern which we were talking about, that this information is coming from the data which is provided by your system as an external content into the Microsoft 365. Okay, so we do have citation for that as well. Let's say, for example, I talk about, tell me about Dodoma. So Dodoma is again just the capital of Tanzania. In that case, again, I know that I do not have any conversation or email or maybe chat or document regarding this Dodoma or Tanzania into the Microsoft 365. It is also going to look into that external system, and then again or the external content that we have got, and again here you can see that we do have a reference of that. And again, whenever you will see this kind of citations, it is giving you the result which we have trained our Copilot on. Okay, so wherever wherever you will see some kind of an citation, obviously it is referring to that citation here which we have added, and in this case the citation is the external item that we have added into the system. Okay, so that was the quick demo of like how we can go ahead and build our first Microsoft Graph connector using PowerShell. But again, PowerShell is not just the limited option, you can go ahead and use other options as well. So whenever you are creating the graph connector, just ensure that it works well with the Copilot. There are few things that you should do, like you should include the URL to item resolver in your connectors activity setting, and then Copilot will become aware when the user share the URLs to your content with one other. Okay, and when users share an item with another, Copilot boosts its importance for the including the items in the response. Then secondly, like provide the rich human readable name and detailed description when you create the connection. And then lastly, like apply the semantic labels for, and the semantic labels will help Copilot understand the semantic meaning of your schema. And then you must apply as many as of them that you know to your schema as applicable. And then lastly, add the user activities, like in addition to adding your content, the external items to the Microsoft Graph, your connector should also add the user activities around your content, and items that have more activities, they are boosted in their importance. Okay. Now that this was the experience which I was talking about when I did not had anything, like it was saying me like it is not able to see any specific information available in my enterprise search, but we filled that gap using this rack pattern, and then we got the data from the external items into the Microsoft 365 Copilot, and then we did that. All right. So now that, for example, if you want to import the external content with some kind of a permissions, we can do that one as well. So let's see quickly like how we can do that.
Yeah, so the information stored outside of Microsoft 365 can be seen by everyone in your organization or just a specific group also. So the rules about who can access this outside information are kept in the system where it's stored. So when you bring in content using a Microsoft Graph connector, you get both the content and its rules from the outside system. So with this info, you can make a list of who can access each piece of content. Then you can bring it into the Microsoft 365. You include this list. So this helps to make sure that only the people listed in the outside system can see the content you bought in. So when you use Microsoft Graph Connector to bringing the outside content, you can choose the different ways to make sure the same people who could see it outside can still see it inside the Microsoft 365 also. Now let's see about this anatomy of ACL, that is the access control list. So the access control list like a list of rules, and each rule has the three parts. So the first one is the access type. So it says if someone can or cannot access something. The second one is the type. So it tells us what kind of person or group the rule is for. So it could be someone from your company, a group in your company, or everyone in your company. So the everyone accepts visitors or a group from an outside system. And the last one is the value. So it's whose the rule applies to, like a person's names or the group name also. So there are some of the ACL's examples also available.
Okay, so for example, if you want the content to be available to everyone in the organization, you can have the access type as grant with type of everyone and value to everyone. If you want the content to be available to a specific group of people from external system with single sign-on with Microsoft 365, in that case, you can have the access type as grant, the type as user or group, and the value as management. Lastly, for example, if you want the content to be available for a specific group of people from external system without SSO with Microsoft 365, in that case, you first need to create the external group into your Microsoft 365 ecosystem, add the users or group to that external group, and then you can use the external groups in the SCL. So quickly, let's see how you can do that. So there are graph APIs available. You can just use the post slash external connections, the ID of the connector, and then slash groups. So this will help you to create the external group with this ID, display name, and some kind of a description. Once you have the external groups created, you can add other another kind of an external group, including the nested kind of an external groups like this. So again, for that, there is a beta endpoint available from Microsoft Graph, and you can provide the connector ID here, group ID here, and in the members, you should be able to add another external group as a member. For example, if you want to add the Microsoft Entra user or Azure AD user into the external group, you can use this kind of an graph endpoint. So you can specify the ID as the user ID, and that's it. You should be able to add that user as a specific user into the external group. And now that, for example, if you want to add the Microsoft Entra group or Azure AD group as a member into the external group, you can use this endpoint as well. Once you do that, for example, now you want to use the external groups into the SCL. In that case, again, we can use the same kind of a thing. We can have the type specified as the group or user. And again, for example, if it is user group or the user, we can specify the value for that particular user or the group, and then we can specify the access type, whether we want to grant them the access or we want to deny them the access. And then the identity source will be external. For example, if it is a nested group, and it will be Azure Active Directory. For example, we have a user or group which is already existing into the Microsoft 365 Azure AD. Okay, so that was a quick thing, like how you can securely bring the content from the external systems into Microsoft 365 Graph Connector. Now that, for example, if you want to take this journey ahead, there are few resources available. For example, if you want to extend the Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, there is a good Microsoft Learn module available through which you will be able to do this extensibility. For example, if you want to go ahead and learn more about Microsoft Graph connectors, you want to build the Microsoft Graph connectors, there are good articles available. Also, go ahead and try to learn more from that. And regarding the code samples, for example, if you just are interested to see the code sample that we just had shown to you, the code sample is available at this URL. Again, there are very cool, nice connector graph connector samples available from the various PNP contributors across the globe. So go ahead and explore them as well. So now that, for example, you already have a task to go ahead and create the graph connector, bring the data from the external systems into your Microsoft 365 ecosystem, probably don't try to do it from scratch. See whether that graph connector is already available under the PNP repository. If it is yes, you can go ahead and start using that directly. Or if in case it is not available, but you have got good scenario to cover, go ahead and raise a pull request there, okay, so that everyone in the community will be benefited out of it. And with that, thank you very much for having us, and hope you got some idea onto the graph connector as well as plugins, when to use in what kind of a scenario. And hopefully this session was useful to go ahead and start building your own graph connectors. All right, so thank you very much, and back to you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank
Navdeep.
you.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Smita. That was definitely a great insight on how bringing information from outside service, because there is no way that a business works inside M365. Definitely, you need to get outside of the M365 ecosystem, get the data, and come back and see how efficiently and innovatively you can come up with solutions. So, that was a very clean, detailed description on all these aspects. So, before I wind up, I have a couple of questions. In
Sure.
fact, I have questions, but I'm going to pull out only a few questions. The first one is from Hamza. He says, is it possible to monetize plugins and graph connectors? Navdeep Smita, anything?
Oh, right. Yeah, Miss, at least as of now, I don't think there is a direct option to monetize plugins. For plugins, at least, yeah. If in case you have the Microsoft messaging extensions created for you, in that case, you can get that published onto the Microsoft Store, and then you can obviously do the monetization part from that. For Graph Connector, I Miss, at least I'm not aware if there is any monetization option available. But for plugin, yes, there is definitely. You can create a Microsoft Teams connector, the messaging extension, and then you can publish that into the Microsoft Store. Again, for example, if you are from a low code, no code kind of an area, in that case, again, you can create the Microsoft Power Platform connector, and then I guess even from there you can get the monetization. So for plugin, I'm aware you can do the monetization, but for Graph Connector, I don't think so. But there might be some ways.
Definitely.
Yes, yes. So it is possible to monetize these plugins and graph connectors, but whether there are some of the specific methods and the opportunities also that may vary and depending on the platform and the nature of the plugins or the connectors. So like the subscription license fees and then the one-time purchase and other things also we have to consider.
All right. Sounds good. So, Nandip, in the meantime, if you could just add the link to the GitHub repo that you were talking about, that would be beneficial. So, Smita, there has a question regarding could you please explain ingestion? So, I think definitely they're talking about the how you can kind of enrich organizational knowledge accessibility to Copilot by injecting the enterprise data content with Microsoft connectors. So, do you have any thoughts on it? Like
Oh,
in
yeah, so
general?
this ingestion is all about like how you can bring the external data into the Microsoft 365. So let's say, for example, when we talk about Microsoft Copilot, it grounds all of your data using Microsoft Graph, but the data which is only available in Microsoft 365 ecosystem. For example, if it is available in SharePoint or Teams conversation, or maybe as an email inside of Outlook, it is available there. But now that when we want to probably go beyond that, because when we are working in our daily lives alongside Microsoft 365, we do use other systems as well. For example, we mentioned as like ServiceNow or Workday, where we do have most of the data available. In that case, for example, if you want to go ahead and make that data available to our users right inside the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. In that case, you can use this ingestion pattern, and then it will help you to bring the data from the outside system into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem.
All right. I'll pick another question because we're running out of time. So, is it possible to integrate Copilot to Outlook add-ins?
Um,
Yes, it's
yeah, it
possible.
is possible. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely it is possible, Hamza. And Khalil, I think your question was like ingestion. Do you mean by creating embeddings into vector DB, or is it something else? So the question from Khalil says that when we talk about ingestion, is it more related to the embedding into vector DB?
Oh, right. Yeah, Miss, at least for example, when you have the when you have the external data, there are main various ways in which you can bring that. First thing is like, for example, if you have the Azure AI instance, Azure OpenAI instance in your subscription, you can go ahead and then use this embeddings so that you can create the vectorization on top of it, store that entire information into your vector DB or maybe into the Azure AI search, and use that to get the information from there. But for instead of doing that, we can directly use the Microsoft Graph connector, which is kind of a very much native way in which you will be able to directly get the data not just in the Copilot but in Microsoft 365 search, SharePoint search, as well as in the context IQ.
All right. I think Khalil was asking about the GitHub repo link. I think the team has pinged it. So
Yeah.
hopefully you have the link. All right. I think that was a great session, Nandeep and Smita. Thank you so much for being a part of the Copilot Chronicles again. Looking forward for more future collaborations and more insightful sessions. So that's it. And on a quick note, I just want to leave that the Global Copilot Summit is happening in 16 cities. So we've already covered Bangalore, and this week it's going to be in Chennai, and then followed by Pune, Gurgaon, Hyderabad, and Mumbai. So I've added the link in the comment section. So if you want to be in part of, and if you are available in any of these cities and you want to be a part of the in-person Copilot Summit, please join us by filling the registrations form. Glad to have you in there, talk to you, understand the kind of nature of work that you do, or how we can kind of collaborate as Microsoft. So looking forward to see you guys in the event, and this is also happening internationally in a lot of other global locations. So just leave your comments. We will get back to you, or just register. We'll let you know. And you can also find out more info about the GitHub Copilot, and we'll be leaving the comment section the links. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thanks, Nandeep. Thanks, Mita. Thanks, Parth, for being a great.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you very much for having us. It is always pleasure to present our session at Reactor. Thank you very much.
Definitely. Thank you. Looking
Yeah,
forward.
yeah,
Bye.
same here. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
take
thank you.
care.
Bye
Bye.
bye.